recording will begin shortly. There it is. Awesome. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you do need interpretation, please make sure that you click on the globe and the interpretation will begin. Si necesitan interpretación, aseguren hacer clic en el globo del mundo y la interpretación comenzará. In the chat, you'll notice that the sign-in link was dropped. So again, please make sure you sign in. When you sign in, we're able to then send you the recap of the session. Oops, hold on. Finger slipped there. Here with us today is Ms. Tavia Isles, Executive Director of the Empower Them Collective. She will be facilitating the three sessions for us in this series. So I will hand off the mic to her right after I just shared today's topic, understanding the collective impact model and how to use it to drive growth and progress. So Ms. Tavia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone, and everyone who is watching the replay of this on the YouTube channel. I'm so excited to be here to share with you about the collective impact model. And just for background, so you'll know what makes me maybe credible to speak about this is for the last 5 years, I and my organization, the Empower Them Collective, has been the backbone entity for a particular initiative in the Antelope Valley. And so the backbone model is a part of the collective impact model. So I'm going to share the facts about what it is and how beneficial the work is. And just so you know, the Best Start initiative is very much formed in this type of model. So it'll help you better understand the global perspective of this work, as well as how you as residents, community stakeholders, community-based organizations, parents, whoever you are, how you fit into this particular model. And then also there's going to be exercises for you to really understand how this works to influence collective change. So we're going to get started. I love to be very interactive and engaging. And so because this is very like factual and information and historical, if any point you have a question, I'm going to invite you to just come off of mute and say, hey, Tavia, I have a question. I think sometimes, at least for me, when we're doing something, we're learning something, we might have a question in that moment. And then we wait till the end, but then we kind of lost how that question related to the information. So I do invite you to ask the question as you see it, as it comes to you, so we can engage in a conversation so that you can learn while we're learning together or speaking together on this work. All right, do I get some thumbs up, some hearts, some agreements with that? Awesome sauce. So just in case, I also wanted to share that I also like to read the slides just in case. I'm not going to throw anyone out there, but just in case you have to multitask, right? Sometimes we have to multitask. And so sometimes you might need to be doing something else and you want to actually hear the content that's on the slides. So I'll be reading the slides as well as adding some additional context. So that way, if you have to switch attention, it's quite all right. Can we agree on that one too? All right, awesome. So we're going to harness the power of collective impact for community change. So welcome to this transformative journey into the world of collective impact, which I deeply love. I did not know about this model until I actually started to do the work. So if you don't know anything about the model, there is nothing wrong with that. You're going to learn today. And hopefully you'll see how the Best Start initiative fits into this model, right? So nod your heads if you're in agreement with me. It's a powerful framework that unites cross-sector partners, which means partners in the private sector, the public sector, the nonprofit world, the religious world, faith-based, cultural, everyone. That's what cross-sector partners means, to address one of our most complex social challenges. Over the next 2 hours, we'll play that by ear. We'll explore how this structured approach to collaboration can drive meaningful, sustainable community change. Together, we'll discuss the origins of this model. I didn't create it, but I love it after I found out about it. understand its five core conditions, examine real-world success stories, and develop practical strategies for implementing collective impact in your community. By combining our knowledge, resources, and commitment, we can create systems-level solutions to problems that no single organization could solve alone. And I just want to say that's right off the bat, I want to just jump in and say that is a distinct difference. A lot of people, a lot of organizations want to address really big issues. And I commend anyone and every organization that is attempting to solve a complex issue. But in this day and age, we need to come together to work together to address complex issues because complex, it's called complex for a reason. There's multi layers as to why this is an issue. And it's going to require all hands on deck to help to identify what is a solution to the problem that will be sustainable over a long period of time. Next slide.
That was me.
It's all right. So here are the objectives that we're going to cover today. We're going to define the collective impact model, understand the framework structure and how it differs from traditional collaboration models, explore its historical context and origins, okay? Learn about this approach, how this approach evolved from decades, so you know it's kind of credible if it's been around that long, of community organizing and collaborative governance, and discover how it fosters sustainable growth, examine the mechanisms that create lasting systemic change in communities, systems change. I'm sure you all have heard this word somewhere in your work, and review applications and opportunities. So we're going to study some real world examples, throw in best start, how this applies, and identify local possibilities for implementation. All right, next slide. You know, I don't know if I might be dating myself. There's Vanna White. I'm gonna call it, you know, Vanna Garzon. Okay. You're my Vanna Garzon. All right. So you're flipping through everything. So let's do an icebreaker. So this is where I do need some engagement, collective challenges. Let's reflect. Think about a challenge in your community that feels too large or complex for any one organization to address effectively on its own. So think of an issue in our community that you just think is pretty large. And you're like, there's no way one little person is going to solve this. So let's share, discuss with neighbor. But in this case, we're going to share right now in the group. Um, who would like to share what they believe is a large, complex problem in our community? Is anyone like to come up and mute? Any issue, there's no wrong answer.
Hi,
Denise?
good morning, guys.
Gloria?
Hi. I think I still believe that the by word of mouth still is not enough out there. I still believe that we're still lacking that community reaching out to letting them know about so much out here. That's what I
Ooh.
think.
Oh, a lack of central communication for this region, this very large region. Thank you, Gloria. Denise?
Oh, oops. One of the things that I know I see because of the location of a lot of the people that I work with and the businesses that I deal with is the unhoused.
Mm,
And even taking the stigma away from being unhoused so that people are willing to ask for help. And I think that's a really big issue, you know, and to deal with the underlying cause of why the people are unhoused and not just put a band-aid on things.
yeah. I agree. So unhoused and really the intersectionality of that impact on the community. Yes, thank you, Raul. I hope I said your name correctly.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you. One of the biggest issues I see is getting our share of the pie up here in the Antelope Valley when it comes to LA County funds.
Raul, me and you can work together any day because that's actually part of my work in the Empower Them Collective is to advocate for more funding to come into the Antelope Valley. So thank you. That is a huge problem, which impacts darn near everything else out here, right? So thank you, Flora.
Hi, good morning. I was just thinking for here we get a lot of employment, searching for employment here in the AV. So like we have a workforce development team, but it's limited, right? So people are looking for employment opportunities or paid on the job training. And it seems like right now the resources are from like 18 to 24, but we have people of all sorts of ages, right?
Mhm.
Yes, that workforce, if you don't mind, I want to add to that. Not only that workforce, but like real career level jobs where people can have the American dream of buying the home and the white picket fence. Like we need more, real jobs that will sustain families. I love it. Thank you. Those are all, and quite honestly, they're all intersected. They're all connected to each other. So if I could, and this is just like off the top of my head, I would really say everything that you all brought up really applies to the challenges of the Antelope Valley disconnection to Los Angeles County as a whole, right? Because the funding doesn't come up. Unhoused, we lack resources and infrastructure to support the community. And then we have no central communication because we do, believe it or not, have quite a few programs and services, but the services we do have, not everyone in the region knows. So I think, I'm gonna be brainstorming on that because you all brought up something that really is unique to just the overall challenge of being in the Antelope Valley. So that might be what a whole collective impact model needs to be about, is how does Antelope Valley raise its visibility and urgency to those decision makers who have access to funding to build out the infrastructure of this community? All right, that was just off the top of my head. I don't know, y'all. Let's work. Let's start having meetings about that. So these shared challenges will serve as reference points throughout this session, helping us ground the theoretical frameworks in your lived experiences and community context. Okay, lived experience is. You can go to the next slide, Carla Gauderzon. Yes, my Vanna Garzon. You can go to the next slide. Not the next slide now. But yeah, lived experience is king in this collective impact model. I just want to emphasize that while sometimes the folks with degrees and credentials and the titles, that's amazing. And we need those people in the spaces too. But we equally need folks who have the actual lived experience and have experienced the challenges that we're referring to really speak up and be a part of this work so that we have additional perspectives and identify actual solutions that is well-rounded. So the origin of the collective impact. So in 2011, there was a publication, John Kania and Mark Kramer coined the term in the Stanford Social Innovation Review article, providing the first formal framework. So fun fact, since I see some ABPH folks on here, I went to a conference, it was like around December or Thanksgiving at AVPH that talked about the collective impact model. And that particular magazine cover was on the PowerPoint slide. And I took a picture of it and went digging to go find the article so I could read up on it. So fun fact, shout out to AVPH folks for that conference. And then we have the FSSG Development Foundation Strategy Group, refines this approach through consultation with multiple sectors and communities. So this is where we start building out the work. And then the historical groups, it builds upon decades of community organizing, systems thinking, and collaborative governance approaches. So something we're going to hear a lot in this workshop, words like community organizing, systems, and I'm sure most of you might be familiar with direct services. So I just want to give a brief distinction between systems and direct services. Direct services provide support to individuals who are having a challenge with an issue. Maybe it's the lack of daycare or the lack of affordability of daycare, hint, hint, best start, lack of affordability, right? And so maybe a provider in this community is going to give stipends to families to offset the cost of daycare. And that's a direct service in a sense, right? But systems thinking is going to ask the question is, why is childcare not affordable in our community? Why is this a thing that many people are experiencing? And so through systems thinking, systems change, we're going to start looking at what are the root causes for why childcare is not affordable to this community and start addressing those issues so that by the time it's fixed, it gets to the community, it's affordable not only for the families who need childcare providers, but childcare providers are receiving being compensated in a manner that allows them to also sustain their business as well as provide for their own families. And then global adoption rapidly spreads as communities worldwide adapt the framework to address complex social change. Next slide. So what is collective impact? Collective impact is the commitment of a group of important actors from different sectors to a common agenda for solving a specific social problem at scale. A mouthful, right? So I just want to make sure I'm clear. Actors in this case mean stakeholders. Stakeholders mean people who are impacted by the issue in the community. And so also solving a specific problem. You notice they didn't say all the problems. You got to get very focused. You got to solve what is the problem you're going to solve. Unlike conventional collaborations, collective impact represents a structured, disciplined approach to bringing cross-sector organizations together to focus on a common agenda for solving complex social problems. It acknowledges that no single policy, program, or entity can tackle or solve the increasingly complex social problems we face as society. The approach is particularly suited for issues that are adaptive in nature, problems where the answer is not known in advance and where stakeholders must learn by doing. These are precisely the kinds of challenges that community struggles with most, such as educational achievement, poverty reduction, health improvement, and environmental state sustainability. And so I want to just kind of emphasize some of the essence of this too. This is people recognizing that no one person can solve it. The government can't even solve it. The best community-based organization in your community can't solve it. It's an issue that's going to require everyone to come together, build trust, learn together, and start to think innovatively about how to address this particular challenge. That is different than most collaborative efforts where most folks come to the table with a belief that they have the answer to the problem. Just want to take a pause. Any questions so far? Any thoughts? No? All right. Look, I saw somebody shake their head. I appreciate you shaking your head. Thank you. Next slide. Hey, Anthony. I feel like I ain't seen you in a minute. So and that's my brother's name, and that's my favorite brother. So, hey, Anthony. So 5 conditions of collective impact. So these are things that you'll know you're in a collective impact model, framework, a collaborative effort when you see a common agenda. All participants share a vision for change that includes a common understanding of the problem and joint approach to solving it through agreed upon actions. So this is really important, because a lot of collaborative efforts sometimes can get off track if there's no solid agreement on what are we actually focused on, what do we believe is the problem, and what are the actions that we're agreeing to identify and work on. So you have to have a common agenda. Next up, I'm gonna jump to the backbone support. This is important. This is where my experience for the last 5 years have been. Creating and managing collective impact requires dedicated staff with specific skills to coordinate participating organizations and agencies. So you know what that means? As a backbone organization, we're doing a lot of logistics for everybody that's a part of this collaborative work. We're providing trainings to build everyone's skill level so that everyone is starting from the same starting point at least. We are the keeper of the historical context of the work of that initiative so that as people come and go, we are the historical fact keepers. We keep what we have done, what hasn't worked, and when we need to reinvigorate the work. Sometimes in our capacity, we also help with fund development to help fund the work of the initiative. And so does that kind of sound similar to like what your Best Start team does? I don't know. I'm just saying, think about that. And so we also do shared measurement. We are collecting data and measuring results consistently across all participants ensures efforts remain aligned and participants hold each other accountable. I also want to add that as Backbone, we hold everyone accountable. If you said you were going to do this, we're going to document that you said you're going to do it. And we're going to lovingly follow up with you to make sure you did it. Why? Because we want to make sure that the attention and focus remains on the initiative and our collective movement to solve the complex problem. Mutually reinforcing activities. Participant activities must be differentiated while still being coordinated through a mutually reinforcing plan of action. So there is a plan of action, and everything is surrounded or has to do with that plan of action. Carla, why don't you put in the chat, what is it called? The CCAV? I'm butchering the letters, but it is essentially the plan, right? That we're all working towards in the Best Start initiative. and continuous communication. It's consistent. Open communication builds trust, ensures mutual objectives, and creates common motivation. So let me jump in that one, okay? So we have a tendency to shy away from conflict. Uh-oh. We have a tendency to shy away from conflict because we automatically assume that conflict is always bad. But when you're bringing multi-stakeholders to the table, we naturally all come with different viewpoints, right? And so continuous communication allows us to all learn from each other, understand others' viewpoints and perspectives. It helps create that trust when we can actually talk out the conflict. So I just also want to add that because sometimes in these type of collective impact projects or initiatives, there is going to be conflict. But communication supports the reduction of the conflict and understanding the various perspectives so that you can build trust together, mutual respect for each other, and have the same objectives and alignment. Next slide. Best Start AB. Thank you, Carla, for dropping that down. So common agenda, let's talk about that deep dive. So inclusive development, which Best Start does an amazing job. Creating an agenda with participation from those affected by the issue, ensuring diverse voices shape the vision. So if you've ever been a part of the Best Start initiative, I'm sure you've seen times where they're asking for your feedback, your thoughts, and your experiences, which helps shape the full agenda and the plan of action. We want to always have clear documentation, formally articulating the shared vision, goals, and strategies so all partners have a common reference point. Ooh, Carla just dropped down the brochure for the Best Start Initiative. You'll see some alignment. You'll see some of these points being clearly displayed in that brochure. And there's explicit agreement, securing genuine commitment from stakeholders to pursue strategies aligned with the common agenda. I feel like perdóname, Sina. I feel like I know what Jessica is saying, but can someone help me clarify if that's a question or maybe not hear me
She's
well?
just letting us know that she has bad signal and such. I think she got dropped from the call, but she's good.
Okay, I knew something bad, and excuse me. So still working on my Spanish. Thank you. So this is also important. Securing genuine commitment from stakeholders to pursue strategies. Okay, so remember how I said y'all all have to be aligned. You can't address a complex issue and this stakeholder is like, we're going to do this to address the issue, and we're going to do this. In collective impact, in the collective impact model, you all have agreed to these are the strategies to address the issue. So basically, that synergy, alignment, and momentum to attack the problem with these set of strategies. And when say your initiative has 50 people, 50 entities, people, like it's 50 to 100 folks all doing the same strategy, you're going to see real movement and the problem being reduced, identified, solved, addressed. Some aspect of it is going to change because everyone is in alignment with the strategy that they're going to work on. So understand that that is super important, that when you are working in an initiative under the collective impact model, you have all agreed to the same strategies and that you will implement those strategies in order to attack that problem at a very consistent, aggressive approach to see real change over time. All right. Nod your head if you're still with me. All right, I appreciate it. We're doing good. So regular reviewing and refining the agenda as partnerships evolve and new learning emerges from shared work. So in the AIM initiative, which we're the backbone of, EmpowerTHEMCollective is the backbone of, every quarter we do a light revisiting of what we've done that quarter. And every year we're looking at, are our goals still in alignment? Did we sway off our strategies? So that is normal. And especially when it's a new initiative, you might have to revisit and recheck quite often just to make sure that the group as a whole is staying committed to the strategies and that you have not gotten off course. So when developing a kind of common agenda, the process is as important as the outcome. The conversations and relationships built during agenda creation establish a foundation for all future work together. So I'm gonna be a little transparent here. That was a real struggle for me in the beginning. because I've always been used to, we make a decision, we move on, right? But in this form, in collective impact, you have to allow for time for the norming and storming and the growing and what have you, right? You can't just try to move on to the next thing without making sure all parties a part of it have a clear understanding of what is going on. So just know, give time for that. If you're like me, you're like, come on, let's move, drink some tea, relax, because a part of the process is to work through this so that it also builds trust and complete understanding of what the approach is. All right, next slide. All right, shared measurement systems. Identify key indicators. Collaboratively select metrics that truly matter for your shared goals. Develop collection systems. Create consistent, practical methods for gathering reliable data. Establish reporting platforms. Build accessible dashboards that make data transparent to all partners. And implement learning cycles. Use data regularly to inform adaptive strategies and adjustments. I'm going to have to pause for 30 seconds. I'm sorry, but someone's at my door and they won't stop ringing the bell.
While she steps away, I'll just mention that in the chat, I did drop the informational brochure of Best Start. You'll notice on the second page, it has the 3 goals of the community change agenda listed. If you'd like a more a further breakdown of like the objectives and the strategies, I invite you to attend one of the Best Start regional meetings.
And thank you for that commercial break. I appreciate y'all being flexible. Okay, so effective shared measurement isn't just about accountability. If you haven't noticed, accountability is a big part of this impact model. You don't have to raise your hand, but how often, just think about it, in some of your other collaborative spaces where there's a whole bunch of people in the room, do people at one meeting say they're going to do something and then at the second meeting it isn't done? And then you're like, we kind of starting all over again because things aren't done. In the collective impact model, accountability is a theme that runs throughout the entire framework because it's one of those weaknesses that will prevent work from getting done and momentum being built. So it's about learning together. When partners can see the same data in real time, they can celebrate progress, identify obstacles earlier, and rapidly test new approaches based on evidence rather than assumptions. Any questions? Thoughts? No? All right. Well, thank you.
Tavia, I have one. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Because I see that we do have a community member here. I'm hearing the material you're giving. How can we also have her understand like how much of a big part she is as a community member, how much of a big part this is also impact her voicing out when it comes to partnering up like with Best Start? Is that something you can elaborate as your
Well, thank you. I would like to say, quite honestly, this doesn't work without community members. Okay? It does not work without community members. Because if every entity really knew what they was doing completely, we wouldn't have these problems. And so when you enter into a space where everyone is agreeing that everyone's on the same playing field, everyone is equal in that your perspectives and insights matter, then we have an initiative that's built on trust, equity, and amplifying the voice of those with the most lived experience as it relates to the issue. So community members are essential to this work. And I would even go further to say, with everything that's going on in the world, with funding being reduced and the challenges and the this and the that, it will be the community that will be innovative and get the work done. Okay, and I run an organization, but it will always be the community that's deeply invested and much more committed because it's their life that they're living. Did I answer your question, Gloria? All right, awesome. Next slide, and thank you for the question. So mutually reinforcing activities. So there's individual expertise. Each organization brings specialized skills and focuses on what they do best, whether that's direct services, policy advocacy, research, funding, or community engagement. Partners aren't asked to change their core identity or mission, but rather to align their work in ways that complement other partners' effort. All right. So when you're getting into an initiative that's under the collective impact model, you don't need to change anything. You just need to, as I like to say, how does what you do impact the ecosystem of the initiative? So through the lens of unhoused, how can my organization that is a policy-oriented organization support the work of providing more housing to those who are experiencing housing insecurity? So it's about showing up into space, doing what you do, but being clear that it aligns with the strategies that have been decided upon to get the results that we need to see. Coordinated action. While activities differ, they're carefully coordinated through a shared plan that ensures they build upon each other without duplication or working at cross purposes. Regular mapping of activities, and that is simply you all get in a room, maybe a big old piece of paper, and you're saying, these are the activities we're doing. How are these activities addressing our goals? And do we see momentum being built in synergy with the work that's being done? Helps identify the gaps, opportunities for synergy, and ways to leverage resources across the network for greater impact. I would also say, you know, with all the technology we have, never underestimate the power of just getting out a big piece of butcher paper and drawing out or writing out what activities the initiative is doing to support the goals. That way you clearly could visibly see where the gaps are. Okay. The power of this condition is that it enables different sectors to contribute in ways that align with their strengths while still working toward collective goals. Schools, businesses, nonprofit, government agencies, community groups can each play distinct but complementary roles in advancing the shared agenda. So I want to go back to Gloria's question too. So one of the things I know for sure in the Best Start Initiative is childcare, right? It's been years since I've had to utilize any type of childcare. And so while I'm a nonprofit leader, I do policy work as it relates to childcare. I'm very far removed from the issue. So what I experienced when I did utilize childcare is probably not even common. Okay, so it's important for those with lived experience and people who are constantly dealing with the challenge to be at the table to share their insight and perspectives. Because some of us, although we're organizational leaders and we do this and that and we have the names and the titles, we might not even be dealing with the issue, so we can't speak to the direct impact of such issues. We just know from an academic standpoint, from a system standpoint, that this is an issue. All right, next slide. So continuous communication, trust building, trust building, trust building. The ultimate goal of communication efforts. Regular rhythms, establish cadence of interactions across the levels. Okay, across the levels. Multiple channels, diverse methods to reach all stakeholders. One of the things I love about Best Start, not only do they send you an email, not only do you see the social media posts, but you're probably going to get an actual snail mail letter. Okay. That's for sure I can identify. That's 3 modes of communication channels. And then if they see you in the community, they're going to probably tell you too. So that's 4. So directly talking to folks, sending snail mail, an email, and social media. That's beautiful. That is alignment. And common language. So shared terminology and reference points. When you're working in an initiative, you want to make sure you're all using the same language, because not using the same language, while you might be talking about the same thing, can cause confusion amongst the initiative, as well as people who are not a part of it, who are not sure how to engage. Successful collective impact initiatives typically establish both formal and informal communication structures. These might include monthly steering committee meetings. What do you all call it, Carla? Like your format of like the steering committee meetings.
Our regional partnership meetings?
All right, that's what it is. We'll make sure you're using shared language. So thank you very much. Quarterly all partnering gatherings, weekly email updates, shared online platforms, and intentional relationship building events. The goal is to create enough touch points that partners develop shared understanding and trust without creating meeting fatigue. How many of y'all are, you don't have to raise your hand, but if you nod your head, I won't tell nobody. How many of y'all are like tired of meetings? And sometimes you just be like meeting after meeting, right? Especially when the meeting isn't actually, could have been an email. See, I'm notorious for telling folks, this could have been an email. Maybe that's why I don't get invited to so many meetings. Like, just put it in the email. Okay, y'all. Meetings about meetings. Yes, we at least actually when I facilitate meetings, I do try to be a little bit more lively because I'm pretty sure that most of you all have been in like a series of meetings. So by the time I get to facilitation, I hope you at least walk away feeling a little bit more energized than when you walked into the meeting. So next slide. So backbone support organizations, yay, that's kind of what I do, and that's kind of what your Best Start team does. Core function, guide vision and strategy, support aligned activities, establish shared measurements, build public will, advance policy, mobilize resources. And so some of the backbone types are standalone nonprofits. That would be the Empower Them Collective, government entities, funder-based backbones, existing organizations, for kids, volunteer-led structures, United Way, or community foundations are all examples of backbone types. Key characteristics, credible and trusted. Now, Empower Them Collective made 4 years old this January. And in fact, when we started working as the backbone, it was actually just Tavia. It wasn't even an organization. And one of the reasons why I was able to serve in that role is because I was someone with lived experience. I was someone deeply impacted by what the initiative was trying to do, and I understood at a greater level what this meant. So I just want to highlight that. So if you're anyone in this space, whenever you're a part of these things, if you have lived experience, you're valuable to the work. Skilled facilitation, political neutrality, data management capacity, adaptive leadership, relentless focus on equity. So those were like the official words, but let me give you the more common language. You're a trustworthy person. You have the ability to communicate about meetings and ensure all parties get to participate. You don't really bring politics into it. You just look at the facts and the research. You understand and have the ability to retain data points, information, raw numbers, how many people attended the events. Adaptive leadership means you're able to be flexible when working with different types of people, entities, and organizations. And then you are relentless about ensuring that everyone has a voice and choice in this space. It's not our heads. Everyone has a voice and choice in this space. I know right now equity is not the word that everybody likes to hear, depending on where you stand in the world. But in a collective impact model, equity is important because everyone has a perspective that should be heard in this space. So without dedicated coordination capacity, even the most well-intended collaborations often fail. The backbone functions as the glue, I say the keeper of the narrative, that holds this initiative together, maintaining momentum when enthusiasm wanes, and navigating the inevitable conflicts that arise in cross-sector work. Let me tell you, when doing this type of work, it's exciting in the beginning, but as I think it's Seth Godin, he calls it the dip. And it's literally like you're rising up and then you go down, and it's that down part. The dip is literally the everyday work that we must do to keep going. And quite honestly, that gets boring. It's not exciting. Sometimes it's daunting. But that dip of that everyday consistency, the coordination, the commitment is where the success potential is actually birthed. So when you are a backbone or you're serving in that capacity, you have to just get okay with the dip, the mundaneness of the work, the everyday rigmarole of this is what we need to do, because that's where the foundations of success is built. Next slide. So just to give a distinction between collective impact versus traditional collaboration. So under the structure, under traditional collaboration, it's informal and often ad hoc. Collective impact is very formal with very defined roles. The goals under traditional collaboration often program focus. Collective impact, systems change oriented. Remember how I was saying direct service is the act of what we do to address an issue. Systems change is how do we find out what's really causing the problem at the highest level, and we work to fix that. Measurement. Under traditional collaborations and individual metrics by organization, collective impact is shared measurement systems. So everyone gets to have access to the same information, and we're also assessing everyone as it relates to collective impact. Under communication, traditional collaboration as needed and often inconsistent. Collective impact, very continuous and structured. Staffing, there might not be no dedicated coordination, whereas on collective impact, there is an organization. The backbone organization is the people that run the initiative to make sure it stays continuous. The continuity is there. And decision-making often remains in organization silos, whereas in collective impact, it's collective with clear process. Like no one can have a conversation or make decisions without everyone being engaged. Funding is usually competitive versus here is often pooled or coordinated together. While both approaches have value, collective impact provides a more rigorous framework for addressing complex problems that require sustained, coordinated efforts across multiple sectors. The structured nature of collective impact helps overcome many of the common pitfalls that derail traditional collaborative efforts. I hope this slide in particular because I think everyone's, at least some of the organizations that I recognize on the call, we all are used to traditional collaboration. And I hope this slide helps you understand like the significant difference between traditional and collective impact, how things are done. Any questions at this point? I love the thumbs up. Thank you, Miss Carrie, baby. Okay, I'm a Carrie Hilson fan. So thank you so much. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so how collective impact supports community growth. All right, so community growth, this is really important. Systemic solutions addresses root causes rather than symptoms. Direct services addresses the symptoms. Remember my child care example? A community-based organization provides stipends to family. That's addressing the symptom of what is the real problem is that child care is not affordable for families. And the reason why it's not affordable is because most families are not earning livable wages. And then the other side of that coin is that childcare providers are not being compensated well enough. So those are the difference between what the symptom is and the root cause. Creating opportunities for transformative change that extends beyond what any single program could achieve. It expands the focus from individual interventions, remember a stipend for childcare, to reimagining the system and structures that perpetuate challenges in communities. Resource amplification. It reduces duplication of efforts and enables more strategic allocation of limited funding, staff time, and community assets toward highest impact activities. So here's an example, and I won't name, because this is a real example in our community. Sometimes, because everything is so siloed, which means very separated, each organization will come to a meeting and they might be addressing the same issue, but one organization is like, well, we do A, B, and C. The next organization is we do A, B, C as well. And the third organization is like, we do X, Y, and Z. And the other one is like, we only do Z. Now, everyone receives money, but notice several of the organizations are duplicating the work. In this example, it's saying like, well, let's be strategic about it. If you're already doing A, B, and C, why don't we rethink how we use our funding to utilize different interventions, and we can then refer people to this organization for A, B, and C. So now we've spread out our ability to service more people instead of everyone trying to serve the same audience, the same people, and essentially are competing with the same people, the same clientele, essentially. This creates platform for attracting additional resources for regional and national funders who seek evidence of coordination and data-driven approaches. So for the last few years, funders have been looking at more of a collaborative effort to fund, as opposed to every organization feeling like they have the solution for the problem. Funders are starting to look at, well, who is working with other people to address this particular issue? And that is valuable. Community empowerment. Centers residents' voice. Hey, it centers the residents' voice in decision-making processes, building leadership capacity within the community rather than imposing solutions from outside. Oh my goodness, that's amazing. Gloria, whoever you're referring to, make sure they get that part. Fosters a sense of collective agency and demonstrates the power of organized, unified action to create meaningful, lasting change. Whew. That is the value of collective impact. It supports community growth, not just organizationally, but also at the residence level. Can we go to the next slide? Wait, did we skip a few slides? Okay, so here's some examples of this. Can you go back one more? Okay, now go. So make sure. All right. So let's explore what this could look like. So collective impact and action, youth homelessness. The common agenda would be end youth homelessness by 2030 with specific milestones for housing stability, education, and economic opportunity. So that is the common agenda for everyone that's a part of Youth Homelessness Initiative. The backbone support youth-centered nonprofit with staff dedicated to coordination, data management, and amplifying youth voices in decision-making. Now, notice in this backbone support example, the backbone is a youth-centered nonprofit. I think that's important to amplify, to make sure everyone is noticing, because you can get any organization to be the backbone. But in this case, and in the case of how we are the backbone for an initiative, is because they are focusing on youth, period. They're youth-centered, which means they involve youth not just as a means to service youth, but they involve youth in the planning of their programs, as well as the decision-making of their programs. We're the backbone because as a leader, I had direct experience with what the initiative was seeking to address. So that's very valuable too. Under shared management, real-time data dashboard tracking, so they will be tracking housing placements, return to homelessness, and youth well-being indicators. Mutually reinforcing activities, schools identify at-risk youth, housing providers expand inventory, employers offer job training, and health systems provide targeted, integrated care. So mutually reinforcing activities, right? I call this the intersectionality of everything. So while we might be looking at housing, what are the things that impact why someone would be unhoused, right? So out here, specifically in Antelope Valley, we don't have necessarily enough housing. So maybe the providers who do have housing would seek out ways to increase their ability to secure more housing options. Employers would offer job training, right? So that they can get a good job so that they can pay for their rent. And health systems will provide integrated care, because if you are not as familiar with the unhoused community, they don't always have immediate access to healthcare support systems to address some of the issues of are the complications of living in, outside. After 5 years of coordinated effort, this initiative achieved a 40% reduction in youth homelessness through their systematic cross-sector approach. The backbone organization focused on youth leadership ensured solutions were relevant and effective. That's another reason why they're youth-centered. Because they use youth leadership to ensure that the solutions were relevant to those who are experiencing this issue and that it's effective to them. So next slide. Is Carla's on Carla, next slide? Thank you. So another example, just to drive this home, collective impact and action, community health, healthcare access, hospitals and clinics coordinate to expand hours and locations. Now that would be great out here because we literally don't have a lot of after hours support, and a lot of our healthcare providers are very centrally located in our region, but we have a very large geographical region. Transportation, transit agencies created routes connecting to medical facilities. So they created routes that would literally just take people straight to the medical facility instead of all the 50 million stops in between. Educations, schools integrated preventative health into curriculum. So the best defense is an offense. So let's be preventative. So they increase education to help folks prevent issues. And the outcome was 30% reduction in preventable ER visits over 3 years. In rural communities, which the Antelope Valley County is, where healthcare resources are limited, collective impact coalitions have successfully improved health outcomes by addressing interconnected factors. By bringing together healthcare providers, transportation agencies, schools, and community organizations, these initiatives created comprehensive solutions to barriers that previously seemed insurmountable when tackled in isolation. The initiative also secures substantial new funding by demonstrating their coordinated approach, which appealed to healthcare foundations seeking evidence-based collaborative models. All right, next slide. All right, so we kind of have a small group right now, so let's kind of walk through this as a group together. So let's select an issue. Choose one of the community challenges identified during our opening discussion, or you can select another pressing issue that requires cross-sector collaboration to address effectively. So for those who shared an example earlier, which one do you think we should walk through right here? We're going to walk through it together. Anyone want to give?
Well, I think the gentleman spoke about the funding to the Antelope Valley because we're so far out. And I believe that that affects all the rest of them that we spoke about as far as the unhoused, the childcare, and everything else. Because if we got more resources, we could tackle some of those issues. So I think that would be a good place to start. That's just my thought.
Okay, well, you came off of mute, and I saw Raul come off mute, so maybe you were going to say the same thing too. Let's focus on that. All right, perfect. I feel like a new initiative is about to emerge. Okay, so if we all can agree, the Antelope Valley does not get its fair share of financial resources that would support the expansion, the growth, the scalability, and support of our community, right? So that's our issue. So let's identify the stakeholders. Who are the key organizations, groups, and individuals who we need to be involved to create meaningful change? So now that we're going to, because we get our money from the county, spas, well, we get it from a lot of places, but we'll just kind of for this sake of this, we'll just start with the County of Los Angeles, right? So who are the stakeholders that should be a part of this initiative to go after more funding and resources for our community? LA County Mental Health, I love it, yes. Who else? Veterans, yep, I love it. These are good. Who else? Community, perfect. What about our supervisor's office? We definitely should have somebody from our personal supervisor's office, right? What do y'all think about some banks? Some financial institutions? We are talking about money. So, let's kind of throw that out there as a thought. Maybe the Chamber of Commerce too, because they deal with businesses. They have resources that we haven't even tapped into. EDD, oh yeah, that's a good one, right? All right, so we have identified some community stakeholders, and of course, community, just straight up people, right? And so let's apply the 5 conditions. For each condition of collective impact, brainstorm how it might look in the context that you've chosen. Okay, so let's at least decide on the shared agenda, which is essentially what are we all choosing as a collective impact model to focus on that will result in getting more funding and resources into this community. So what should the primary focus be? What are we trying to achieve? Is it just simply more money, or do we want to say deep investments in infrastructure support to sustain the community? Go ahead, Ro. Go ahead.
Uh, I'm thinking we should strive for some of the agencies that service the general LA County area to start branching out and opening up satellite offices over here.
Okay.
That way they have a stake in the community.
I agree. I would think even some of the nonprofits, they're not based here, but definitely service the area. I think that's something that should be, everyone should have a full-blown satellite office because there is skin in the game. I love that. So that's increasing county departments as well as other nonprofits who get funding to service this area to actually set up shop in the community. So maybe infrastructure, some increase in our infrastructure to support the growth. Well, because we've already grown, we've outgrown the funding for this community. And actually, I have an assumption. I'm gonna share it because I always try to share my assumption because I used to work with several departments. One thing I would notice, I work in housing, I've worked for DCFS, I worked for probation, I worked in mental health. And one thing I always noticed, which was very interesting, is that people who might be originally from outside of the area, but who might live here now would still use like their family's address in LA as where they actually live. And so here's my here's my conspiracy theory, because regions based on the numbers of where people live is how they get money. Part of the formula. And if everyone is using people who are like from LA and other places are you still using their grandmother's or mother's address, then to the system that's going to count how many people live in what region, it still shows that they live there. So the money never really gets here because people don't always just say they live in Antelope Valley. We have a very large transient type of population. So all right, so we've agreed on a lightweight shared agenda, okay? And so what would be the first steps to build momentum toward a collective impact approach? There's no right or wrong answer. Just throw something out there. What do you think would be the first step? So we decided on what the issue is. We come up with like a shared agenda. So what is like one step that we could take to build momentum toward a collective impact approach for this issue?
Maybe each group contributes based on their strengths.
Oh, so do like a strength assessment for everyone. So we can see where everyone really aligns. I think I like it. I like what you said, Gloria, voicing it out. But I really like yours, Carrie, because that is helpful. So then everyone knows where they fit into this initiative now instead of the overlapping. So I think mapping out the strengths and where each entity, organization, or stakeholder fits into this initiative. All right. It wasn't that hard. Are y'all ready to start it? Like, let me know. I'll send an email and we'll get started on this initiative. All right, so next slide. All right, we can skip this one because we did this live and then with everyone. Thank you, Carla. So common pitfalls and lessons learned. So these are the things that will come up as an issue if we don't stay aware. Turf wars and competitions. When organizations protect territory or compete for recognition, collaboration suffers. Create clear agreements about roles and ensure all partners receive appropriate credit for collective achievements. Impatience for results. Systemic change takes time. Yes, it does. Often 3 to 5 years before significant outcomes emerge. Set realistic timelines and celebrate intermediate milestones to maintain momentum. That's that dip I was telling you about. So that dip is going to be for a couple of years. You got to stay strong. Over-reliance on leadership. When initiatives depend too heavily on a few champions, sustainability is at risk. Build distributed leadership and ensure knowledge transfer across multiple stakeholders, such as the Best Start Initiative, where a lot of the community members are developing as leaders into this work. And data overload, collecting too many metrics creates burden and confusion. Focus on a few meaningful indicators that directly connect your common agenda and driven action. Next slide. So equity and collective impact, because remember, equity, although it might be a bad word in some places, it's still relevant in this space. In order to achieve that, you want to always share power. Decision-making authority is distributed equitably. Authentic voice, the most effective lead problem definition. Those most affected lead the problem definition, and system analysis, examining root causes of inequity, not looking at just the symptoms or the band-aid that we do quite often to just address the immediate need. And resource justice, I think, Raul, this is what you're referring to, fair distribution of funding and support. So that's what we would be demanding on behalf of the Antelope Valley, but I'm gonna take it a step further. Within the Antelope Valley, we need to make sure that there's fair distribution of funding and support, because there's a lot of entities that are actually doing the work and addressing some of these community needs. So equity isn't just a value to affirm, it must be operationalized throughout collective impact process. This means examining who participate, how decisions are made, whose knowledge is valued, and how resources are allocated. Without explicit attention to equity, collective impact initiatives risk reinforcing existing power imbalances, even while trying to address community challenges. That's really important, y'all. I'm gonna say that again. Without explicit attention to equity, so you have to be very intentional about it. Collective impact initiatives could still reinforce existing power imbalances, even while trying to address the community challenges. So something that is meant to be good still can cause harm to the community if you're not intentionally asking the questions of who should be at this table. Are we the right people to be the leaders? Have we given shared power to those who are most impacted by the issue? No one's above accountability. I just want to say that no one is above accountability, and something that is meant to be good could turn out to be harm if not monitored properly. Next slide. So the role of data in advancing equity, because we love us some data, but let's make sure we're using it properly. Disaggregated analysis, breaking down data by race, gender, geography, and income, and other relevant factors reveal disparities that might be hidden in aggregate numbers. This targeted analysis helps identify which populations aren't benefiting from the current approaches. That's important. Oftentimes we're focused on the raw numbers, right? But we need to separate out the metrics so we can understand if everyone is being able to benefit from the resources that are coming in. So for example, a youth employment initiative discovered their overall success rate masked significant disparities for rural youth who lack transportation access. Community-defined metrics. When community members help define what success looks like, which Best Start has done a great job at, which indicators matter most, measurement systems become more relevant and empowering. We then start to really get a story to be told. This participatory approach values lived experience alongside technical expertise. Example, residents in a neighborhood health initiative prioritize measuring changes in stress levels and social connections along traditional health metrics. I don't know about you, but when I was taking care of my mother, I would be really stressed out, just like seeking out help and support for her. So those metrics would have told a different side of the story in addition to just the raw health metrics. Effective collective impact initiatives use data not just to track outcomes, but to continuously center equity in their work. Regular data reviews with an equity lens helps partners identify and address unintended consequences or implementation gaps before they widen disparities. Next slide. So this is for all my community members, engaging residents as leaders. Y'all know, compensate participation whenever possible. Value residents' time and expertise through stipends, childcare, meals, and transportation support. Budget for these expenses from the start. Schedule accessibly. Hold meetings at varied times and locations to accommodate different work schedules and transportation needs. Consider virtual options when appropriate. Provide capacity building. Offer training and mentorship to build residents' confidence and skills in areas like data analysis, public speaking, and systems thinking, and shared decision authority. Create formal structures that give residents meaningful power in governance, funding decisions, and strategic direction setting. When residents with lived experience, there go that lived experience again, of the issue being addressed take leadership roles, solutions become more relevant, feasible, and sustainable. Their contextual knowledge and networks are an invaluable asset that complement professional expertise. Next slide. All right, so building the backbone organization. A core staff of 3 to 5. What? That sounds like something I know. Typical minimal staff size needed for effective backbone functions in a mid-size initiative. This is just an estimate, but a 15% budget allocation recommended percentage of total initiative budgeted dedicated to backbone operation. And you need to have 6 key skill sets, essential capabilities, including facilitation, data, communication, project management, fundraising, and community engagement. Effective backbone organizations balance strategic leadership with behind-the-scenes support. They must guide without controlling, maintain focus without prescribing solutions, and sustain urgency while allowing time for meaningful collaboration. This delicate balance requires staff with exceptional relationship skills and the ability to navigate complex group dynamics. Next slide. So we're going to go over the 10-step process for collective impact. We're going to breeze through this. There's also a handout. I don't know if you're going to provide the handout here, Carla, or somewhere else, but there is a handout just to give more details to this. So identify a shared common issue, bring together diverse voices to define a specific issue that affects the community deeply, build a core leadership group. Again, diverse, trusted community leaders, establish a common agenda, develop a clear shared vision for change and define long-term goals, develop shared measures, choose simple, meaningful indicators to track progress transparently. Map existing efforts, identify programs, resources, and people already working on the issue. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Next slide. Coordinate mutually reinforcing activities. Each partner takes on a task aligned with their strength that advances the shared goals. Establish a backbone team. We already know what they are. Create feedback loops. Hold regular meetings and use trusted community platforms for updates. Center equity in resident leadership. Ensure those most affected by the issue are leading and shaping decisions. And then lastly, celebrate wins and adapt together. Acknowledge victories and use learning to refine efforts continuously. Next slide. So here's some of the resources, case studies, collective impact, FSG, Stanford Social Innovation. I have a membership. I read that regularly. The Tamarick Institute also provides accessible frameworks. So and then the Collective Impact Forum. There's like a whole entity that educates and provides resources regarding this. Next slide. So funding the collective impact, there's the startup phase. Initial funding often comes from local foundations, anchor institutions, or government innovation funds. Evidence-based expansion as results emerge, initiatives can attract larger investments from regional and national funders looking for proven approaches. Infrastructure support, ongoing backbone operations typically require multi-year commitments from multiple funders to ensure ability and independence. For the AIM initiative, That would be First Five, the Hilton Foundation, and I think California Endowment. So it's a multi-sector funding approach. And then aligned investment. Partners align existing program funding with the common agenda while maintaining their organizational identities. And successful funding strategies for collective impact blend restricted and unrestricted resources, balancing support for backbone functions with investments and specific strategies. Many initiatives create shared funds that allow partners to pool resources for greater flexibility and alignment. Next slide. These are just some technology tools that you can use for the Collective Impact Initiative. Clear Insight, Tableau, Microsoft Power, Community Commons, collaborative platforms, basically project management platforms, Asana, Monday, Notion, Microsoft Teams, community engagement. I don't think we might use WhatsApp out here, Poll Everywhere, Bang the Table, and Neighborland. Technology can significantly enhance collective impact efforts when thoughtfully implemented. Accessible data visualization tools make progress transparent to all stakeholders. And then collaborative work management platforms help coordinate activities across organizations. Digital engagement tools expand participation beyond those who can attend in-person meetings. Next slide. So action planning, individual commitments. Identify one concrete step you can take in the next 30 days. So this is if we were all going to decide to implement an initiative. But because there's the AIM initiative, there's a Best Start initiative, and there might be other initiative, collective impact model initiatives represented here. This is where you would go back to your initiative and start to get to work, engage at a deeper level of understanding now that you understand the full approach of collective impact. So next slide. So here are your key takeaways. Remember this, structure matters. The 5 conditions provide essential infrastructure for sustained change, right? Relationships drive results. Trust and authentic connection are the foundation for meaningful collaboration. Data enables learning. Shared measurements create accountability and adaptation. Equity must be centered. Without intentional focus, disparities can persist even with collaboration. Collective impact offers a powerful framework, as I've shared many times, for addressing complex social challenges, but it requires patience, commitment, and willingness to work differently. By bringing diverse stakeholders together around a structured approach to collaboration, communities can create sustainable systems-level change that no single organization could achieve alone. Next slide. So thank you. Well, we didn't quite spend 120 minutes together, but kind of close. We covered the 5 core conditions, the implementation of the 10 steps, and the potential of impact. That is it for me. If you have any leftover questions or thoughts, feel free to share them. I definitely appreciate being in your space, and I hope you learned something today.
Thank you, Tavia, for sharing that information with us. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tavia. Let me just go ahead and switch my screen here. But in the meantime, while I'm switching screens, like Tavia said, if you have any questions, if anything is bubbling up in the back of your mind, now is a good time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Raul, weren't we on the stage together?
Stage where?
Were you at the ABPH is a collective impact training? It was like November, December of maybe 2022.
I don't remember. It
I'm
could have
gonna
been.
find a picture.
All right.
We're on the stage together.
Okay, you should be able to see my slides. Can I just get a thumbs up if you guys can see it? Yeah, awesome. All right, so just a reminder, our next sustainability workshop will be May 28th. This is through the lens of 0 to 5, centering early childhood education to change a community. I really hope I get to see you all here. After that, we'll have a session on June 4th, identifying strategic community partners to advance the Best Start community-centered mission, which I shared earlier in the chat. So make sure you take a quick look at that. As a reminder, our next meeting will be on the third Thursday. The next Best Start Regional Partnership meeting will be on the third Thursday of May from 10 to 12 at the All for Kids Family Resource Center in Palmdale, or you can catch us online on the third Tuesday in the evening from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Via Zoom. So in case you can't get to the location on Thursday, you can catch us on Tuesday. Last but not least, I want to make sure that you are aware you can follow us on social media to stay up to date with all the workshops that we offer. We're going to have a few more coming up, or just to stay in the know. Make sure you follow us. If you scan the QR code, you'll also have access to join our mailing list, so you get these directly to your inbox in case you're not on social media. Without further ado, I want to say thank you to Tavia A. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to stick around for a couple more minutes and ask any questions. The resources will be emailed out. So make sure that you sign in if you didn't do so. Any other questions? Alrighty, like I said, feel free to disconnect at any moment or stick around for questions. Any individual questions you might have.
Not a question, but I'm glad that everything's going to be shared visually. Thank you.
Karen.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Raul. Thank you, Flora. Thank you, Natalie.
One thing I just wanted to share with Tavia, I like one from your whole presentation, it was very insightful, but one of the things that really captured me was not everybody's in the same pace as you, like to go ahead and get stuff done, and you're like, wait, you have still, and that for me just brought me to realization that sometimes I feel like I'm either in some certain platforms, I'm like the slow pace, and there's people that are like very fast, and then sometimes we're like, okay, you got it, okay, let's go. So I like the fact that overall, that let's make sure that we're all in that same space of a pace that, to merge this goal. So for me, that I take away a lot from the whole presentation, because that is what an initiative process should be, that we're all like we're all striving for that same goal, and that should be something in consideration. So yeah.